Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. And here are our top stories: managing virtual learning tech issues and the impact of the shift to work from home. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Daniel Klein. He's Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Hey, Dan, welcome back to the program. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Welcome to my virtual living room.
It looks lovely. It's a great decor, very beautiful. Your wife did a wonderful job. 'Cause I know you didn't. I know you had nothing to do with that.
I had a little bit to do with that, actually. I picked the couches. She did everything else.
Well, she did a great job. All right, Dan. So let's jump in. Kids are back to school, and there are a litany, a plethora, if you will, of tech issues with virtual learning. What can you tell us here?
Yeah, schools weren't prepared for this, and they had the whole summer to deal with it, and they don't know what they're doing. The tech departments at schools were basically, dealing with like a handful of computers or maybe even kids having laptops or whatever, but they weren't ready for remote, work from home and having these massive technological changes. In some ways, you couldn't expect them to be, but in other ways, it's been a real issue.
Yeah, we're talking about limited budgets, I'm assuming. There's already challenges at the state and local level with budgets because of the pandemic that hit the tax revenue. We're not going to talk about that here. But I would say that we all knew that there was either going to be virtual learning or in-person learning or a hybrid approach. So I guess, what gives in terms of planning?
Yeah, so my son's moving to a hybrid approach where he'll be in school, but you don't have to go to school. So the teachers will be teaching to the classroom and to a remote audience. And that's really difficult. Look, they're not trained for this. Like captivating an audience on a Zoom call or a Google whatever is performing, and that's not what most teachers are. It's difficult. So this is not an ideal situation. Look, I'm not a giant believer in traditional school. I kind of felt like if we couldn't go back to the classroom, maybe just give a reading list and some projects and let's catch back up in December, but that's obviously not how schools are doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you have to do something like that. You really got to have parents really available to help their kids kind of weed through some of the challenges. But Dan, I was talking with one of your colleagues, Maury Backman, on the podcast this past weekend, and she was kind of discussing some of the challenges that she has with her own children. And then there are some additional expenses that parents have had to pay. For example, one school that Maury was saying wanted to have a blank background, so they went out and bought a green screen so that kids were not distracted, either watching somebody else or the actual child was not distracted. There's definitely more costs or additional costs that maybe were unintended here.
Yeah, back to school spending is up. I look at my own house. So Jeff, I collect computers. I have this Mac that I'm on, which is a Mac Mini. I have a 16-inch Mac Pro, and I have a 12-inch Mac that I use for travel. My wife and son have to use a PC. My wife's work computer broke, so she needed to use my son's laptop. So I had to go out and cobble together another computer because my son needed to be on a computer. He has a Surface, and the Surface wasn't good enough for what he was doing in school. So even in a house that's really tech savvy, it was tricky. And look, back to school spending is up. The National Retail Federation said parents are going to spend roughly, it's about $800. And most of that, it's not schools, it's not backpacks, it's not clothes, it's technology. And look, I feel bad for people like Maury that have little kids. She's lucky in some ways that she has a flexible job, but she has to take half her day. Kindergartners can't sit and look at a screen for 5 or 6 hours. That's why when I say that like traditional education, we're overvaluing it a little bit, I'm sorry, kids could miss a semester. They could have a semester where they have a reading list and a movie list and parents just help them do that, where how important is any one semester? And I know that's not the traditional view, but look, you're looking at someone who ignored school and sat in the back of the classroom and read, and I've done fine. So I think we're married to this. Everybody learns the same way, and let's just keep doing school. And look, this is great for Lisa Simpson, but some of us are Bart Simpson, and that's going to be okay.
I didn't know we were going to be talking about The Simpsons, but I'm glad you brought in that cultural reference. Dan, the other thing that I think we still haven't figured out, and maybe you have a sense for this because your own child's in school, but we've got a lot of children from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. You mentioned being able to swap PCs with your wife and your son, but there are some families that maybe only have one PC, or they don't have a PC. They may only have a tablet. This is still a very important issue, and it creates some inequity, not only when it comes to data and digitalization, but also with education.
Sure, and there are families that might have multiple computers, but multiple people, and there was no reason to have a computer per person, and now that's necessary because mom and dad are working, the kids are at school. Our school system here has been working feverishly to hand out, I'm going to assume, Chromebooks and internet hotspots and other ways so people can work from home and kids can have access. But even things like, look, kids who rely on school lunches, they're having, drive-by pickups and things like that. It's really tricky, and, I'll give everybody some slack. Nobody was ready for this. Nobody saw this coming. So here's what the good part of this is. Going forward, let's say there's a kid in your class that, gets, God forbid, gets cancer and can't come to school because he's getting treatment. The ability to set up Zoom so that person can still have access to class, every school is going to have that. They're going to understand how that works. So I think going forward, schools are going to be much more open to the idea of, oh, hey, Jeff, your kid has the flu today. Well, he or she can watch class as much as they can. They can watch it on demand later. There's going to be a lot more flexibility because a lot of teachers who didn't know how any of this works are going to be very well schooled in how all of this works going forward.
Dan, don't you think we're all kind of going through Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, Google Meets fatigue, though? I mean, even the kids. I mean,
Yes.
that we're craving. I'm craving social interaction. I have a lovely wife, but I think we're both craving social interaction beyond ourselves and our cats. Isn't that the same here with education? You just can't. You got to have a mix. You got to have some in person because we are human. By human nature, we want to be around. We're social. We want to be around people.
Yes, it's problematic. It's rewired my brain. I had a friend last night who wanted to talk, and I just assumed he meant meet on Slack. And I Slacked him and said, hey, I'm watching the game. Throw me some questions. And he called me. And he said, you didn't answer. And I said, I had no concept that you would even consider calling me.
Yeah.
And I said, honestly, I can't talk because my voice is worn out from having talked all day, but I would normally relish doing that. Look, I've met some friends for dinner. You wear a mask, you sit diagonal from each other at the table, you be as careful as you can. But yeah, I miss people more than anybody. I'm someone who travels to our office once a month, largely just so I can have dinner with my colleagues and have coffee with people and touch base. And for me, this has been a very strange, difficult period. And honestly, I have no energy when my family suggests oh, let's do a Zoom on Saturday. It's yeah, I spent 30 hours on Zoom broadcasting last week or having meetings. I'm not going to have a Zoom where 90% of it is you trying to figure out how your iPad works. It's a challenge. I have not done a great job keeping up with people, with the exception of my mother. I've largely been a non-player in terms of keeping up with my friends because, frankly, I'm exhausted from all the work Zoom, all of the effort of just keeping up.
Yeah, I think that this is going to have an impact on kids. Well, look, Dan, I want to go to a quick break, and I think this is a perfect segue because when we come back, we're going to talk to Dan about some of the work from home challenges and how employers are reacting. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. and we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Daniel Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thanks for keeping me.
Absolutely. So Dan, we talked about this virtual school, and we kind of segued into some of the challenges that we have as adults and professional workers. But this work from home thing isn't a panacea, and we are seeing some employers actually reduce salaries. They're saying, hey, you lived in San Francisco, now you're living in Iowa, I'm just making it up, and we're going to reduce your salary. Thoughts about this? And there's some other issues going on as well.
Yeah, I think employers are handling it the wrong way. So, and I'll say this, it's in not a political way, but if you and I do the same job, what we get paid for that job should be the same. But if you live in San Francisco and I live in, I don't know, Costa Rica, which is a very inexpensive place where one of my colleagues lives for about 8 months out of the year, then he should get paid less for the living part of it. So I think we need to look at the salary as the salary and where you live as a benefit. So if I say I want you to be based in New York City or Washington, D.C. or San Francisco, which are very expensive, you should be paid a cost of living adjustment, a benefit, a housing benefit that subsidizes your ability to live there. So you're not getting paid a higher salary, you're getting paid this special thing. Just like you might get paid a night differential. If you, like when I worked at the Boston Globe, if I had to work like a late shift, they paid me a little more because there was a differential. It was harder to work at night. So I think we need to approach this differently, where the salary is the salary. So we're doing the same job, but if I choose to live someplace cheaper, I'm not getting necessarily that benefit. Or if I choose to live outside where the office is and you don't see me, well, I'm not getting this added benefit. It needs to be a different line on your paycheck. And I understand there's tax ramifications of this. So this is something we need to deal with as a nation, not just as individual companies.
Dan, in terms of, we kind of led into this going into the break and as part of our conversation about education, but I think there's a lot of virtual fatigue. I think it's also, I'm wondering, have you seen any stats or do you have any thoughts on the level of productivity versus, Zooming and Skyping and Google Meeting and Microsoft Teams?
So people are overwhelmingly more productive when they work from home, and it's largely a guilt factor, but I would say they're not necessarily happier. So one of the problems I have as someone who's worked from home, and I think a lot of people have it, is you're never not working. I feel guilty if at 9:30 at night I don't answer a Slack message. And I've had my bosses and my coworkers be like, look, I'm just sending it. You can answer it in the morning. Like, this is just when I have a minute to do this. But I do think there is some fatigue. When you go to work, there's more delineation between this is my work day, this is the end of my work day. So I think as companies, like my wife works for a nonprofit, and they've gone to, at Fridays, they're ending their day at 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And they're just acknowledging that everyone is starting earlier, they're leaving later, so let's dial the workday back. I think it's important to do things like say, hey, you know what, this random Monday, let's just all take a 3-day weekend, or let's duck out at 3 o'clock, every day this week. Companies need to do an active job of protecting their workers, and I think it's something that even really good companies are doing a terrible job with.
I think it's hard, Dan, and I'll get your thought about this, to maintain a culture. How do you bring in a new employee in a virtual environment, for example? You got to really think that through. I mean, how would you bring on a new Motley, a new Fool, in today's environment. Now, probably they have journalistic experience, and maybe that itself goes a long way, and there's some new systems to learn, et cetera. But in terms of culture, how do you bring that?
It's really difficult. So we had an intern class this summer that worked fully out of the office, and some of them, because they didn't live in states where we do business, moved to Alexandria to work from like an Airbnb, and it was a challenge. So what we did is we actively made sure that they met lots of different people. One of my friends, one of our interns who just got hired to go into analyst training for us, one of my colleagues said, "Hey, would you have a virtual coffee with so-and-so?" And I did. And, then I sort of became a guardian angel, someone who said, "Okay, you should meet so-and-so, you should talk to so-and-so, here's what you should work on." And now she's an employee, but she's an employee who's not going to get to be in the office until probably next summer. So it is tricky. Like, I know David Gardner, one of our co-founders, has coffee with every single new hire, just like a half hour, just to show he's approachable, to talk about some of the values of the company. He's doing that virtually, but does it have the same impact? It probably doesn't. Do you understand how sort of cool our office is if you're not there, and how fun it is to just bump into random fools that, might be people from television or from, and just have them chat with you? Look, I had that at the Boston Globe. You'd be at the coffee table, and Dan Shaughnessy would sit down next to you, coffee table, the coffee maker, and Dan Shaughnessy would sit down next to you, like he's famous and he's just some guy who would talk to you. That's what it's like, and I think it is really difficult to maintain that. I know I've tried really hard with my friend groups on Slack at the company to make sure I have an occasional check-in, and yesterday one of my friends pointed out that he had shared that he got a kayak, and we had a whole conversation about it, and then he pointed out that 2 weeks before we'd had almost exactly the same conversation, and none of us had remembered. So it's really difficult right now. It's hard on people. Like, I feel very disconnected compared to how I normally feel, and I'm broadcasting with our audience and my colleagues, 2 or 3 hours a day where I get to chat with people. I can't imagine what it's like for someone who's just having their regular work day.
I have to think that this is for senior leaders within an organization, especially human resources, and none of us work in the human resources capacity. But this has got to be an incredible challenge. You mentioned the salary component, but the cultural component and the productivity component, I think, are even larger here. And I just got to think that they're, struggling is not the right word. They're working real hard to try to figure this all out. And chances are it won't get figured out before we get a vaccine. It won't get figured out before we get back to the office. But if this is the future, Dan, we've got to figure out how to mend both sides together.
Yeah, I think co-working is going to be a big part of it. So I'm in a co-working space. And right now, that's not the most social of things, because in the common areas, we're all wearing masks, we're avoiding each other. There's not a lot of people here compared to what there would normally be. But I think in a non-pandemic world, if you decide, hey, I work for Facebook, but I'm going to live in Austin, Texas, and not work in a Facebook office, there might be 10 other Facebook employees, and you might not get an office, but you might all have access to a WeWork or a Regis or something similar, where you're still having events, you're still having some of the social things that the company does. I think it's going to be something that good companies really, really actively manage. Like, I know there's maybe 7 or 8 fools in Florida, and in the non-pandemic era, we would do things like meet at Disney World or go to dinner, even though we don't all live all that close to each other, and it's a very large state. I think companies need to do more of that. I know our Colorado office, which is about 50 people, which is obviously closed, had a socially distanced outdoor picnic, as a way to get people together. It's very, very difficult. And look, a lot of companies are doing things like happy hours. I'm not sure happy hours, we're all sitting around the Zoom, are going to help us. I know my company sent me a care package with like board games and snacks and other things, and we don't know the recipe yet, but I do think your Googles, your Facebooks, your Apples, your big companies have really smart minds working on this, and we should monitor what works. Like, one of the biggest things that's worked for us at Motley Fool is, and we haven't done this because we've had some transitions, but normally each year we have a writers conference, and we bring everyone in to the office, and it's one day of meetings, a dinner, we all go out for drinks after that, and then the next day there's a half day of meetings. Now, almost all of us come in the day before on our own dime and stay a day late. I organized a dinner on that the night after last year where 50 of the 75 of us stayed and went to dinner, and then about half of us went to the casino. That builds our bonds. It makes it so you're less alone when you're at home and you're alone. And I think companies, look, it's probably going to be a boom time for Vegas and Orlando and places where you could do big company gatherings to build those connections. Because I do think a lot more companies are going to be finding ways to take remote people and celebrate them and build culture. But the world is going to look very different. I'm not saying we're getting rid of offices, but I do think less of us are going to work in offices, and many of us who are in offices aren't going to be there as often.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think we all crave that intimacy and that socialization. It's going to be really interesting to see how we kind of bring people back and reform that. Dan, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning, and we look forward to having you back again next week.
Jeff, I need a hug. So
thanks, buddy. Have a great week.
It's a tough world. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place, check out our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same old stuff.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.